About 14% to 30% of people report being breadcrumbed within the past year, according to recent studies and dating surveys. The signs are obvious, but the hope always wins out. Waiting on their texts, constantly going hot and cold with you, giving your 100% to someone while all they do is give you crumbs of affection. Why are you holding on to something that's draining the life out of you? And more importantly, what can you do about it? Trust me, after working with hundreds of patients, I see this time and again, and it all boils down to one obvious but overlooked truth. I'm jourdantravers, a licensed psychotherapist, and today I'm showing you exactly how to call out a breadcrumber and something deeper you need to know about this dynamic. In 2023, a group of psychologists decided to dig deep into breadcrumbing, not just what it is, but how it actually feels to the people on the receiving end. They brought together 9 young adults, mostly university students in their 20s, who had all been breadcrumbed in the past year. What they heard sounded almost like a script. It always started the same way. Charm. The breadcrumber came across as funny, flirty, affectionate, saying all the right things, even dropping big declarations like, "I love you," way too soon. Then came the shift. Promises about future turned out to be empty. Words and actions stopped lining up, and the mixed signals started piling on. One participant put it simply, when you look through rose-colored glasses, even the red flags look like a normal flag. Eventually, the warmth faded. Less time together, excuses to dodge serious conversations, hot and cold behavior that made their partner feel like an option instead of a priority. At the core was one thing, avoiding commitment. The impact was heavy. Every single participant said breadcrumbing left them with trust issues in future relationships. 2 were diagnosed with clinical depression. Others talked about anxiety, self-doubt, pulling away from friends, even physical symptoms like weight changes, sleepless nights, or skin breakouts. Why do people string you along with crumbs of attention instead of giving you the real thing? According to the group, breadcrumbing wasn't random. It usually came down to a handful of motives. The most common one was attention. Several participants said their partners only reached out when they were bored or lonely, like sending a quick message to get validation, but disappearing when it was time to give support back. One woman explained it as, "He just wanted my attention whenever he felt alone, but he never showed up for me when I needed him." Others said it was about avoiding being alone. Keeping someone on the hook made the breadcrumber feel less empty, even if they had no intention of real commitment. Some admitted their partners did it to look cool to friends, almost like a status symbol. One participant recalled how her boyfriend bragged to his group that he was sleeping with her, and that seemed to matter more to him than the relationship itself. And then there was power. By holding back real commitment and giving just enough crumbs, breadcrumbers stayed in control. They decided when to reach out, when to disappear, and how much closeness to allow. That imbalance, where one person is always waiting, gave them the upper hand. And why do people put up with it? For hope? The hope that one day the attention will finally turn into something real? Now, here's where it gets even more serious. In 2023, researchers in Spain surveyed over 600 adults, ages 18 to 40, about ghosting and breadcrumbing. What they found was clear. People who had been breadcrumbed reporting feeling less satisfied with life, more lonely, and more helpless compared to everyone else. Here's the twist. Ghosting on its own didn't show the same impact. People who were ghosted scored about the same on well-being as those who hadn't gone through it at all. The authors suggested a reason for this. Think about that. Ghosting hurts, but at least it ends the story. You're cut off, the silence is total, and while it hurts, you eventually move on. Breadcrumbing is different. Always waiting for the next text, the next sign of affection. The study showed breadcrumbing operates like a form of ongoing ostracism. You're never fully rejected, but you're never fully chosen either. And living in that in-between space is what slowly wears away at mental health. That unpredictability, the waiting, the craving, the false hope is what wears people down. It works like intermittent reinforcement, the same pattern that makes gambling addictive. The real damage isn't just from being ignored, it's from being strung along. But before we go on, if any of this is hitting home for you, take a second to like this video and subscribe. We break down the psychology behind why people do what they do, always backed by research. Now, how do you stop breadcrumbing? Someone on Reddit asked men directly, "Why do you breadcrumb in dating?" The answers poured in. Some admitted they did it out of boredom or loneliness, just reaching out when they wanted attention. Others said it was about keeping options open, holding people on the back burner until something better came along. A few were blunt. They just said that they wanted sex without commitment. And one response summed it up perfectly. It only works because people tolerate it. If it didn't work, we wouldn't do it. That tells you everything that you need to know. Breadcrumbing survives on your attention. The moment you stop giving it oxygen, the entire game collapses. Of course, saying just walk away is easy. But anyone who's been breadcrumbed knows letting go is the hardest part. Because you're not just breaking from a person, you're breaking from the hope they planted in you. So let's get practical. Here's what's worked for people before and what can work for you. First, name the pattern. The moment you call it or label it breadcrumbing, the fog of confusion starts to lift. You realize this isn't about your worth, it's about their behavior. One of the most powerful things you can do is get clear on what you actually feel before you say anything. Ask yourself, when they don't follow through, what does that make me feel? Maybe it's, I don't feel cared for, or I don't feel like I matter. Once you know that, you can express it without blame. Instead of saying, you don't care about me, you can say, I'm struggling because I don't feel cared for in this relationship. Notice the difference. You're not accusing, you're just sharing your experience. And then you can add what you want for yourself. I want to feel like I matter to my partner. Now, here's the hard truth. Even if you phrase it perfectly, the other person may not respond the way you hope. They may get defensive, or they may simply not be able to give you what you're asking for. And that's painful, but it's also clarifying. Because if they can't meet your needs, you've learned something important. You deserve to be with someone who can. When psychologists ran focus groups with young adults who had been breadcrumbed, they didn't just ask what hurt, they also asked how they cope. Researchers found the way you cope after breadcrumbing can make all the difference. If you want to see what your own coping style looks like, I've linked a free coping strategy scale in the description. It's a quick quiz that shows whether you're relying on healthy strategies or stuck in ones that might be holding you back. You can pause this video, take the test, and come back to see on which side of the spectrum you fall on. Here's how participants coped with breadcrumbing. Some said the only thing that got them through was leaning on friends or a therapist. Having someone remind them that, no, you're not crazy, this is really hurtful, helps. Others threw themselves into self-work. They started picking up hobbies they'd abandoned, focusing on school, career, or just moving their body again. One participant said, the more I invested in myself, the less I cared about waiting on his texts. A few admitted the turning point came when they finally cut ties. Even telling the breadcrumber directly, this isn't working for me, felt like taking their power back. And then there were the short-term fixes. Some tried rebound dating, venting, even breadcrumbing back. But almost everyone said that those things only gave temporary relief. The emptiness was still there the next day. The pattern was clear. The people who healed weren't the ones waiting for crumbs to turn into a meal. They were the ones who shifted their focus back to themselves, their goals, their support system. And that's what started the breadcrumbing of its power. I'm jourdantravers, I'm the clinical director of Wake Therapy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.